这个礼拜的观点好谈，诚如你在上一节所看到的，这个伊藤诗织，他把伤口摊在世人的面前，甚至投入自己大把的时间跟精力，才造就日本国会修法。这一段故事当然很值得接下来要进行性平三法的我们来做借鉴。因此呢，今天我们除了走在台美的最前面，请到了伊藤诗织小姐加入到我们的新闻线上，同时在我们的现场，今天也邀请到了我们的专业律师以及嘉宾。我们先欢迎妇女新知协会的常务监事庄巧汝律师。
主持人、各位观众朋友，大家好。
以及台湾性平等教育协会的秘书长韩怡珍女士。
大家好。
好，今天三立国际辩论社呢，在台湾媒体的前线首次独家访问伊藤诗织。我们接下来就要来聊聊她的心路历程，以及我们这一回的主轴：各地对性骚扰的偏见以及潜规则。So, Ito-san, welcome to join us. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
如同我们稍早提到的，伊藤诗织她其实是日本史上第一个实名露面，而且揭露自己被性犯罪的女性。当年她只是26岁的实习记者，但是勇于捍卫自己的权利。所以我们今天特别邀请她来跟我们分享她的故事。All right, Ito-san, we'll go to you. It's been 8 years since your case happened. What's your feeling now? And when looking back to all the things you have been through?
Well, it's just surprising to hear that it's been already 8 years. For me personally, it has been quite difficult 8 years, and not just personally, but for the society as well. I think it was the really important 8 years that we could finally have a platform and voices to talk about gender equal issue, gender violence issues. And now what I can say for sure is that it's easier to speak for sure than before.
All right, you spent 5 years to win the case. So can you just talking about in that time, someone was encouraging you or about your family, your career, or even your friends after that? Is there any side effect?
Well, when I decided to speak in public, my family were completely against it. They were afraid what kind of backlash I can get, and also to speak about sexual violence, to speak about rape as a survivor was unheard of in Japan. So especially my family were afraid that my career would be ruined. And also if I go out to the street, people would just see me as a victim. So it was quite difficult to share my decision to them. But I just have to say, I talked about my own experience, and Me Too happened in a worldwide after 6 months of my speaking, and that wave have helped me a lot. So just thinking about if the Me Too movement as a movement didn't happen, I don't think I'm speaking to you today, So it was such a collaborative voices together from around the world, and now happening in Taiwan. That's really special to hear, and that's something that has to happen now.
We learned that in Japan in tradition. Sometimes people said if you want to have a job or an opportunity, you have to do something as an exchange. And some people might think those might be unspoken rules, and especially for girls. And is it still happening in Japan? Is the society still under spoken rules or even female hatred?
Well, I wouldn't say that is an unspoken rule. I mean, I'm sure we share a similar culture in certain way, but in Asia and speaking in Japanese language, there is always barrier between women and men, and also, to the older generation and younger. So you have to remember there's always the wall between, and sexual violence happens when there is a unbalanced power. If you have a certain same amount of power, or if you're more powerful, let's say if I was a daughter of a prime minister, I don't think I would have experienced it. Maybe, So what I want to say is that I wouldn't say it's an unspoken rule, but it's more what we have to focus is to understand this kind of violence happens in a certain situation when people try to overuse the power.
All right, actually, you fight this for a long time. So in the 2017, the member of parliament have revised the century-old rape law and raising the minimum prison term from 3 to 5 years and broadening the definition of sexual assault. Do you see this as getting back to justice, no matter to you or to other victims?
Well, personally, for my own case, because my case happened in 2015, so it didn't really helped in a way as a criminal case. But I think it was the time. Well, the reason why I spoke to the public in the first place is also I wanted pleasure to change this law. So it was really important change, which hasn't been changed for past 120 years. So that was a quite big thing. And before, if you steal something, you would go for jail for 5 years. If you rape someone, it was 3 years. So now, it was heavier sentence. That's important. But in Japan, still, unconsented sex isn't rape. Meaning that to prove the rape, the victim has to still prove that you've been violent, threatened enough, or you've been violated enough so that you couldn't fight back. And that still pressures for the victim to speak up. And it's still a quiet burden and quite a big wall for the victim to go to the police. So, of course, it was an important change. And also that change included that now male victim can be seen as a victim. Before, it wasn't for male victim to be a rape victim. So it's a big change, but still there are things that we have to change. And now we are slowly changing, updating the new law as well.
Or are we just talking about changing the law or changing all the environment? And next question will ask that what kind of change of yourself, the biggest change for your life at that time?
Well, looking back, speaking to public about my own experience, about my nightmare has changed my life, my daily life. And I've been threatened for my life, and I couldn't feel safe to go outside. So I eventually had to move away from Japan. So that was quite a big change for me. But at the same time, the change had to happen. And I'm very glad. I have no regret for what I've done, and people who I've met through this journey and fight. And now witnessing this is happening in Taiwan, we had to speak up. So I have no regret, but I have to be honest. Personally, my life has changed a lot, and I can't say if it was a bad way or good way, but it's definitely different.
So just what about you said you might notice that the hashtag #MeToo wave is happening in Taiwan. So any suggestions?
Yeah, well, what I felt when I talked about it, people saw me as, why would you talk about such a thing? And I realized that we can't let victims to speak. No, we can't just, assume that victim would say me too. What we have to do is that we as a member of a society have to watch out each other. So you don't want to be bystander, which maybe you often end up to be. Or you, of course, don't want to be a perpetrator. But to do so, you have to speak up. Even you're not victim, you have to speak up for others. So what I would say is that even you're not victim, you can't let other people to speak. You have to use your own voice and speak for others.
All right, Ito-san now lives in UK, and being a journalist, you are also a documentary filmmaker. Can you just share some stories what are you making recently?
Well, I have been making several projects right now. One is about female genital mutilation in Sierra Leone. And yes, it's it's not very popular topic here in Asia, but it's happening in Asia as well. And I think it's kind of social norm that to be a woman or to be a man or to be someone, mother, father, daughter, in certain society asks you to be one way, and that FGM, female genital mutilation, is one way to be a perfect woman. So I think, it's such a maybe far away story, it seems, to Taiwan and to Japanese audience, but it's something that I think can relate to us. So yeah, that's one of the story, and other stories I've been covering about Zainichi Korean story in Japan, which we still have a strong hate crime happening in Japan, which isn't really talked about here. So it's quite a difficult story to do from inside of Japan. But because I now have been able to, tell the story from also outside, it's been a little easier